Hey guys, Jason here with MusicSoftwareTraining.com. I want to give you another Ableton tip, hopefully help some of your songwriting. In this video, I'm going to get into those sounds that kind of bounce around the stereo field, that kind of fill the spaces within your rhythms and your main song themes. It's those extra little sound effects that can really make all the difference in keeping your song sounding interesting throughout a 6, 7, or 8 minute track. So I like to call these sounds head candy, and I'll just show you kind of what it sounds like, and then I'll kind of break down how I approached it. All right. Okay, so as you can hear, there's certain sounds that are kind of bouncing through the stereo spectrum already. And if I solo this track, you'll kind of hear what's going on. I'll just jump forward a little bit. Okay, so that's the basic idea. So let me show you how I approach making this. First thing I'm going to do is create a MIDI track and drag in a drum rack instrument. So these have some of the sound effects that I'm using. So if I turn off all these effects, and we'll just kind of take it one at a time. And then I need to turn off my return tracks here, so we're just getting the dry signal. Okay, so basically just a bunch of kind of random sound effects and sounds. So then I like to wash these sounds with a decent amount of reverb and delay, and so go ahead and add some reverb delay here. So this is just a basic. So that's starting to do the trick. And then I add a filter delay to kind of randomly throw things around a little bit more. So it just gives a little bit extra. It's kind of subtle. Next thing I have here is I created two separate chains. So the bottom chain is just nothing. So just a regular sound is going straight through. And then the top chain is running through two filters. One's a low pass and one's a high pass. And that kind of obviously creates more interest because the sounds are running through the frequency spectrum. So there's kind of that rising and falling type of sound that's going on. Okay, so now this effect here, I've got this part, the ping pong delay, turned off, so I'm not using this. So I'm just running this chain here. I guess I tried this out and it was a little too much. So in here, and I find this really important, is using an auto pan. So this basically is what's throwing things left and right in the spectrum. And as you can see, the shape, I don't just start off with your regular back and forth. By raising the shape, what actually happens is it spends less time in the middle and more time on the side. So it gets these sounds out of where your kicks and snares and hi-hats and if you've got voice parts or whatever, a lot of that's going to take up the middle space. So these effects I like to spend more of their time on the left or right side. So that's what I do here. Next thing I do is I use a sidechain compression to the kick, just so that these sounds, you know, all this heavy processing, reverb, and delays, I want that to get out of the way so the kick still sounds punchy. So when this is playing through, as you can see, it's kind of pushing down the volume of the effects a little bit. So it just makes the kicks a little bit more clean. Then a limiter so things don't get too loud, and I cut out the low frequencies of this because I don't want a bunch of low frequency mud on my effects. I want the low frequencies to be taken up with kick and bass and you know, sub sounds. And I also roll off some of the highs as well. That way the hi-hats and the upper frequency sounds that are, you know, essential parts of the song end up sounding cleaner as well. And then the utility is just simply used to raise the volume of the overall sound. That's a long mess of effects, but hopefully this little bit of insanity makes sense to you as far as the way that I'm thinking about how I want my sounds to come across. I want some random action, I want some movement, I want, you know, long delays so, you know, these sounds kind of stay in throughout the song. But what I'm also doing here, and you'll see here, is I'm running these sends to these return tracks here. Actually, it's C and D. So this gives more movement. One is more based on reverb, and the other is more based on filter and panning and a little bit of delay as well. So if I just solo this filter here, this is what's being added to what's already happening on this track. And this basically makes it to where there's several different things panning at the same time. So the sounds kind of bounce around in both ears, but with different effects, which I find to be really cool. So let me play here. Let me get up here a little bit. So that's the processing that's already happening on this track running through this extra processing and this extra panning. Pretty cool effect. And then if I solo this over here, C, this is more like a panning reverb that I made to kind of just create little whooshing sounds. As you can see here, there's the panning. I add a little bit of flanger to it, gives it a little bit more movement, and show you what it sounds like. Cool. So now if I solo just all this head candy related stuff, you'll hear what everything sounds like together. So a lot of movement going on there. And what I do in here, you may notice, is I do some like double hits and triple hits and whatever, just to kind of create different syncopations with the delay. If I just did a single hit every time, it would sound kind of samey, but by doubling the hits and tripling the hits and putting them close together, it takes the same delay but gives it the illusion of a different delay rhythm. So that's kind of a trick that I use as well. So I also kind of put some effects and things on the stabs, but I have a number of layers here of stab sounds that I'm also processing. As you can see, a good amount of filtering, some EQing, adding saturation to the sounds, and as you can see, more filtering here, saturation, different delays, another filter. So I just go a little wild on it. I don't have like a planned method. I just hear in my head what I want, and whatever it takes to make that sound or make things interesting, I'll just keep going with it, you know, and make sure it's not totally overdone. So let me show you what the stabs sound like, because these are also kind of bouncing around in the stereo spectrum. And a lot of that's running through the second return, as you can see here. So this is more filter and panning and delay that's happening here. And that's creating this. So altogether, this just creates a whole lot of movement in the song. And that's kind of how this song came to, you know, sound as full and with as much movement as it has. So let me just go ahead and play a little section here for you. So there you have it, guys. That's how I kind of make what I call the head candy parts of my music.